right, everybody. Welcome to the Daily Dope Show, where you get the dope from me, your daily commentator about the dope show. Anyway, I just wanted to do a little commercial for something. Found this old paper I wrote when I was in college back in the day. I believe I wrote it in I want to say either in 1999 or 2000 maybe. Could have even been as late as 2001. It's called The Dope on the Drug War. I ain't even lying. You don't believe me. And for the fuck of it, I think I'm going to read that later on. Maybe even live stream it or something. I doubt anybody will be watching, but I will be doing some of this while I live stream it. But what we will be doing right now is we'll be talking about an interesting development in the cannabis world. And for that, we have Alex Pasquarello, cannabis staff member, writing this story. I noticed it first when Tom Angel was reading it. He was personally reading it, and as he was reading it, he was tweeting pieces of it out. And I'm like, what's he reading, man? Is he reading like The Emperor Wears No Clothes or something? Because this is just like a history lesson on hemp or something. And cannabis, talking about like the founding fathers smoked cannabis. But nope, he was reading this lawsuit. Federal lawsuit against Sessions and the DEA says marijuana Schedule I status is unconstitutional. And this is I need something like this right now. It's been a really rough couple. I'm still looking down the barrel of an electricity bill that I can't pay that will be due in about 3 weeks. So I'm pulling together everything I can figure out what to do to try to get that together. If you want to help, there will be a link in the description to my GoFundMe and to the video about my situation of me getting robbed. So if you didn't know about that already and wanted to check it out, it's there. So one of the things I do to cheer myself up is read news about weed stories and what's going on. Usually there's not a whole lot of good ones. It's always, it's always Reefer Madness and how even though where laws are changing for the better, it's still bullshit. We still have to deal with this overabundance of caution on legalizing marijuana. Forget about taking prohibition out. That's not going to happen. You can legalize marijuana all you want. Prohibition's never going away, in my opinion. It would be nice, but it's just people will always get arrested for marijuana crimes. It just don't seem like we'll ever be able to get away from that as a society. Or will we? Now, if we're waiting around for the government to do something about this shit, dude, come on. How fucking long can you wait? How much longer can you wait? Meanwhile, you got people like Trump who straight up lie to you. Oh, yes, states' rights all the way. And medical marijuana, we should just legalize that shit, huh? That's what Trump said when he was running for president. Now, I'm not saying that, people generally keep their campaign promises or whatever, but come on, man, this is some serious shit when you say this is a big issue. It's one of the biggest issues facing us in modern times, believe it or not. And I can make a really good case for that if you think I'm full of shit. Is it as big of an issue as us funding terrorist groups and allied up with Saudi Arabia, one of the most Wahhabi Islamic fundamentalist, things in the world? They doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, it makes about as much sense as the funding of radical Islamic rebels in Syria. But, does those things there that I just mentioned, do those directly affect you on a day-to-day basis, like marijuana being illegal? To me, they don't affect me as much as marijuana being illegal. I'm sorry, they just don't. Any fucking day the cops can kick in my door. And now thanks to Sessions, they can take all my shit and I can just go to court and have a fucking fight for it. Sessions has brought back one of the most heinous things that this country ever did. And that was a violation of the Fourth Amendment in ways that I don't even want to sit here and describe. But yeah, the forfeiture and seizure situation is pretty bad. And I live in Michigan, so I know what the fuck it's all about. Michigan is one of the worst states already for this. Obama's protections against it didn't really help much. Michigan had ways around it before that even came down the pipe. So there's that. So what's this lawsuit all about? Plaintiffs are claiming that the classification of cannabis Schedule 1 substance is irrational and that it violates the U.S. Constitution. A diverse cadre of cannabis activists filed federal lawsuit Monday challenging the constitutionality of the Controlled Substances Act as it pertains to marijuana. I would say as it pertains to anything, really. If you're talking about the U.S. Constitution, I could find ways for it to mean that prohibition is just not something that is an American thing. Attorney Jeff Sessions and Drug Enforcement Agency Acting Administrator Charles Rosenberg were named as defendants in the lawsuit brought on by former NFL player, 2 children using medical marijuana, an Iraq vet and a post-traumatic stress disorder, that's what he has, and a social justice nonprofit organization. The CSA's classification of cannabis as Schedule 1 substance, a designation reserved for the most dangerous substances, including heroin, LSD, and mescaline, is so irrational that it violates the U.S. Constitution, plaintiffs claim. I love when people talk about Schedule 1. There's not a whole lot of things to talk about except for the fact that LSD and mescaline are on there. I mean, what's the big deal about LSD? Why is that such a big thing? I mean, you can't even prove to me that it doesn't have medical value, so I don't know why that's a big deal. It's not possible to die from taking too much LSD. All right, the 89-page complaint filed with the Southern District of New York by attorney Michael S. Hiller further claims that the federal government does not believe and never has believed that cannabis meets or even met the 3 Schedule 1 requirements. High potential for abuse. No. No medical use and treatment. Definitely not. And no ability to be used or tested safely, even under medical supervision. Now, that one's the most absurd. I'm not even going to touch that one. I mean, that's just obviously on its face the stupidest thing you could apply to marijuana. But even the first one, high potential for abuse, when you think about that, you think about something that is super addictive, like, I don't know, crack or something, where as soon as the buzz wears off, like a nitrous balloon, you're like, oh, I want another one. You know, or no medical use and treatment. Tell that to the, I want to say millions now of people that are being treated and using medical marijuana every fucking day. Give me a break. There's no way you can stand by that one. So, quote, indeed, the federal government has admitted repeatedly in writing and implemental national policy reflecting that cannabis does, in fact, have medical uses and can be used and tested safely under medical supervision, the complaint states. On that basis, the federal government has exploited cannabis economically for more than a decade by securing a medical cannabis patent and entering into license agreements with medical licensees. And that's a fact. So they're sitting here talking about how, oh, there's not enough studies. They're doing the studies. Oh, we don't know, it's not medicine, or you can't, do this or that. They're doing it all, and they have a patent on it. And if you read the patent, it's clear that they're talking about it in a medicinal context. The lawsuit goes on to state that the 1970 Controlled Substances Act, as it pertains to cannabis, was enacted and subsequently implemented not to stop the spread of a dangerous drug, but instead to suppress the rights of African Americans and Vietnam War protesters. The Nixon administration ushered the CSA through Congress and insisted that cannabis be included on Schedule 1 so that African Americans and war protesters could be raided, prosecuted, and incarcerated without identifying the actual and unconstitutional basis for the government's actions, or even the government's interest in these groups. But the complaint stated, the lawsuit seeks a declaration that the CSA is unconstitutional. A ruling in the plaintiff's favor would not nullify the law, but instead put a permanent injunction against enforcement of the law as it pertains to marijuana. Bingo. And that's what I mean. Like, if you're waiting for politicians to come around and legalize marijuana, don't hold your breath. Democrats and Republicans alike are really just not in any kind of hurry to do anything but keep it illegal, maybe make it more illegal. As you see with the Republicans, they're not afraid to publicly state that they would like to crack down on it, as you heard Lindsey Graham say and others. And speaking of cracking down, now today is Tuesday, not still for me anyway, for at least at least an hour or more. But anyway, another thing that blew up over the weekend and like it just mushroom cloud on Monday was this whole idea that, there's going to be this Jeff Sessions crackdown. And in that vein, we've heard, they sent the people out to Colorado and they're going to have this report about how marijuana, they're going to connect marijuana to violent crimes. Well, you know what? How are they going to do that exactly? Because everybody knows that that's not true. Everybody fucking knows there's no connection between marijuana and violent crime, especially where they're looking. They're looking in Colorado. Why are they looking in Colorado and not Washington or Oregon or Nevada? You wonder. And the answer would be simple. The Alcohol Control Board are in charge of marijuana distribution in those areas. So maybe they want to start somewhere where there's nothing like that going on. They've seen Colorado doing all these good things with the tax money. That's, the government don't like that shit. When you become self-reliant, the government starts getting pissed about that. The federal government. I don't know what it is. They got to bug up their ass because they know they can never do it. But anyway, everybody's scared shitless about this crackdown that's about to come down the line. Well, is Jeff Sessions even going to last a week out? I mean, you hear about Trump on Twitter just dressing this guy down like he's a turtle without a shell. And pretty soon he will be without a shell. Is he going to resign? Will he quit? Who's going to fucking replace him? Are they going to keep on this warpath? All these are valid questions, but to sit here and to, speculate time and time again, we had the Daily Caller, we had The Hill, we had, all these marijuana publications just yup, they're going to crack down. Yup, the crackdown's coming. We haven't heard anybody say that there's a crackdown coming. Even if Sessions did do something they just went into some place in Colorado, where they met with that mayor and, and they just busted a facility that was growing 10,000 plants or something. This is all hypothetical, but what if would they announce that? I don't know. I think they might. I think they'd get on TV and have a press conference right as it was happening. Because they're not just going to do it in the hope that no one notices. It's going to be announced. But they're not going to announce it today and be like, oh, yeah, next Thursday we're going to bust somebody. It's not how it works, man. So this whole fear-mongering campaign by, I don't even know what the deal is. But, you look at The Hill. That's where I first saw it. And the Daily Caller. Those are two right-wing as hell publications. Don't even tell me they're not. And don't even tell me the writers that are writing these stories aren't. Give me a break. Even if they are so-called left-wing or liberal or whatever else you can be besides right-wing fascist when it comes to this kind of propaganda and scare tactics, they basically put together a little case scenario that, here's all the things that make this sound like it's legit. Well, we'll see. I'm not going to do a story about it until I actually see something that indicates to me that there's something that's going to happen or something will happen, and I will do a report about it. I don't think that there's not enough political capital left in Jeff Sessions' world to fucking do this. But on the other flip coin, it's what is this? Some kind of distraction from all the other shit storms that are brewing around Sessions and everybody involved in his marijuana, ramping up the marijuana, ratcheting up the government's war against pot or whatever the fuck they call it. I don't know. Who knows? And frankly, I'm running out of energy on Jeff Sessions, and it sounds like so is Trump. So who knows if he's going to last out the week? I highly doubt anybody, even Chris Christie, is going to come in with that much fervor against marijuana. But Christie would be the fucking guy. Or Giuliani, anybody like that replaces him, maybe. Because when you're talking about Jeff Sessions and his desire to do this ramping up of the marijuana thing, cracking down or whatever you want to call it, really it's not just him. If you think this is just Jeff Sessions, the big boogeyman, it's more than just Jeff Sessions, dude. It's like first of all, you got the private prison lobbyists who, the private prison corporations, like Correction Corporation of America and people like that, but they're the big one. And, what they do is if you look right in their charter, right in their internal documents, you find that their business plan basically says that, one of the things that would hurt our business is if, you guys started going a little easier on drugs, especially marijuana. So they rely on marijuana being illegal. They rely on people going to jail, prison. That's how they make their money, asses in cells. So, this isn't just Jeff Sessions. You got those guys, and then you got those guys have all kinds of politicians in their pocket. Those guys, they're just one lobby. And then you also have the big pharma lobby they're definitely trying to take marijuana, put it into some kind of magic powder and press out little pills and give you pills. Here's your CBD pill. Here's your THC pill. Here's your THCA pill. That's not what medical marijuana even, this is cannabis, man. It's a natural plant. We do not want that to happen, but they're there. They're pushing for this crackdown just as hard as Kevin Sabat is pushing for this crackdown, just as hard as even the alcohol lobby is pushing for it. There's people like AAA who are making propaganda on pretty much every other week basis about cannabis and fake statistics and bullshit stories. And these guys, they're in the game of making marijuana remain a crime for whatever reason. It's in their best interest, I think, because there's more car crashes when there's marijuana instead of alcohol. No, I mean, the other way around. There's more car crashes when there's alcohol instead of marijuana. The more marijuana is available and people are, have access to it, somehow alcohol sales go down and drunk driving accidents go down. Wow, what do you know? That's one of the things they never tell you in those studies that claim marijuana driving is causing all kinds of accidents and shit. None of them studies have panned out to be anything but bullshit. But what they always say is that, that's... Anyway, we're going to get back to the actual story at hand real quick because I got a couple more things to say about it. So the people that are involved in this lawsuit it's a pretty interesting collection of people. You got a retired NFL defensive end, Marvin Washington of Dallas. A longtime cannabis legalization proponent is suing because the CSA makes him ineligible to obtain grants under the Federal Minority Business Enterprise Program to start a medical marijuana business. Then you have Alexis Bartel, 11 years old, uses medical cannabis to treat her intractable epilepsy. Her parents, both military veterans, moved their family from Texas to Larkspur, Colorado, so that she could access the medicine that her family says dramatically improves her seizure condition. She is suing because the CSA restricts her ability to travel freely with her medicine and also because the federal illegality of cannabis forbids her from fully accessing the benefits due her as the child of a military veteran. When he was just 1 year old, Yeager Cottle of DeKalb County, Georgia, was put in hospice care, diagnosed with deadly Leigh disease. His parents turned to medical cannabis with hopes of relieving his near-constant pain and believe it has extended his life. now 6. Yeager relies on medical cannabis and, like Alexis, is suing because the CSA takes away his right to travel by airplane or travel to or through states in which medical cannabis is illegal. Just stop it already. And he's from Georgia. That's probably like the worst state. Jose Balin, 34 of... I'm sorry, Georgia. I say that about everybody because, prohibition's never going away. So we're all the worst. And I find more and more that it's not the government really that wants marijuana laws to be the way they are. It's actually your neighbors and the people at the church you go to and the store you shop at. It's them, all right? They're pretty happy with the way marijuana laws are, believe it. So we have Jose Balin, 34 of Seminole County, Florida, served in the U.S. Army and was deployed to Iraq for 14 months starting in May of 2003. Today, he uses medical cannabis to treat PTSD and is suing for the right to safely enter a military base, travel by airplane, and travel to states where medical cannabis is illegal. So he's like, fuck you, I'm going to go right up on the base with this shit. And I like that. I mean, he might be a recruiter or something. I don't even know. He might actually have a job at the base. And then you have New York Cannabis Cultural Association, which is a 501c3 nonprofit helping marginalized and underrepresented communities engage in the legal cannabis industry, fighting for criminal justice reform, improving access to medical cannabis, and advocating for the adult use legalization. The group contends that the CSA was enacted and enforced in a discriminatory manner, historically targeting populations of color, and today prevents them from participating in the legal cannabis industry, and he would be pretty much spot on. I wish I had more time, guys, because I would sit here and read this whole thing to you, because this isn't just a lawsuit. This is like the complaint that they filed with the court. This isn't just your typical legal mumbo jumbo. It's just like reading like a good book by Jack Herer, like The Emperor Wears No Clothes or something. It's just like full of cannabis facts, history. It tells you about how it works and how it helped Alexis with her epilepsy. There's a whole section in here about Jeff Sessions and how he, is a racist and how all the bad things he's ever said about cannabis. Talks about Jose's PTSD. And, this is a great document, man. It's really awesome. I have to give the lawyers that put this together the award for the only cool thing I've ever seen lawyers put together. And it's even, like I said, it's got some history in here. Like right here, it tells you about some earliest known times cannabis cultivation had been documented. And to me, it goes beyond that. Like there was a time when we don't know how people were actually documenting things. We know that the Sumerians maybe were the first people writing shit on tablets and whatnot. Before that, people were painting shit on caves maybe or something. Whatever the case is, I think they were all using cannabis. Cannabis goes back. Here's some history of cannabis in India. Talks about the presidents and how they, the early presidents were involved in the hemp industry. And America was basically a hemp colony. Colonial America's use of the cannabis plant was by no means restricted to industrial. And it talks about how some of the presidents smoked cannabis. And this is a great read. So if you're interested, you can find it here at the Cannabis article about it, or you can probably just Google it. The lawsuit is basically Marvin Washington, Dean Bartel, Alexis Bartel, Jose Balin, Sebastian Coate, Yeager Coate, Cannabis Cultural Association, Inc. plaintiffs against Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III. Don't get it confused with his father. In his capacity as United States Attorney General, United States Department of Justice Charles Chuck Rosenberg, in his official capacity as Acting Director of the Drug Enforcement Agency, United States Drug Enforcement Agency, and the United States of America. People always look at lawsuits against the United States of America, and they're always like, oh, you will never, that's just an overreach. You can't possibly beat them. Actually, a lot of those get settled, but this one's going to have to be like, my guess is this thing's going to go high. This is right now, it's at the district court of somewhere in New York. It's going to bounce up to the state Supreme Court of New York, probably. I mean, whatever, I don't even know. I have no idea how this works. But I don't think it's going to be settled by this court, if this is a lower court. This thing's going to the top. Maybe. Well, I don't know. Well, it wouldn't even get heard then either. Because this isn't something that, like, if they win, all of a sudden Jefferson Beauregard Sessions has to go to jail or pay a fine or any of that shit. This is just going to basically make somebody say, yeah, you're right, this is unconstitutional, so enforcing these laws is not a thing, because they're not laws, because they're unconstitutional. I guess, I don't know. Well, that's all I got on this. I don't know if we're going to hear much more about it, because you know how these things are, but when the time comes that something else happens, I will let you know about that, because I'm pretty interested in this. Weirder things have happened to change laws, and it's really not just a matter of whether or not you think this is a legitimate way to affect change. It's whether or not the people that have to make the decisions believe in it or not. I mean, all it takes is one judge to say, yup, you're right, and then some other judge has to challenge that decision, or somebody has to challenge that decision and take it to a different court. And along the way, as long as people keep saying that it's, yeah, you're right, this is unconstitutional, what else are you going to do? I mean, that's the hope. So have a good one. I will be back with more clips. There's a lot of stuff going on, although, you know, you would think, well, there's nobody legalizing marijuana or anything. Yeah, that's not the only news going on around it, and not just the Jeff Sessions stuff. But besides that, there's a bigger picture of a drug war that's going on. And I think I've been really focused on cannabis the last, I don't know, the whole time this channel's been around. At first I was focused on like that and Duterte, and I was like all over the place. The whole time I've had this channel, no mention of the drug war at our border, the Mexican drug war. Things are happening there. It's been it's on pace to be the bloodiest year, and I think it's time I do a story about it. Don't hold my feet to the fire, but I think you're going to see that in the future. And again, in case you didn't catch the beginning of this clip for some reason, I don't know how that's possible. Yeah, I wrote this in college, my business college, in economics class. And I will be reading that very soon.